Booktube, salute. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel, whatever the case may be. Um, we're in September, if you can believe it. I started this chapter. I started a lot of chapters. I started this channel on the beginning of May. I think May 2nd of this year, and now we're almost in September 2nd. So started it in the late spring, and here we are in the early autumn. So time flies when you're having fun. Of course, where I am in the world, in the heart of the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, the season autumn doesn't exist. There's no plants for any leaves to fall, but definitely the weather cools down. Although we're in September and it's still hot, hot. Today was a really hot day, close to 50 degrees Celsius. I think that's above 120, 121 in Fahrenheit, just really monstrously hot. But hopefully the weather will cool down now that we're in September going forward. But whether it's sunshine or rain or snow, we have books. And this video I wanted to do TBR for my September, explain my September TBR, show you what I'll be reading and what I'll be, some of the YouTube or booktube events that I'll be participating in, hopefully. Um, the first thing is Shake-Tember, which is an event that is honors Shakespeare. So booktubers, bookish people, whoever, all people who are watching, are encouraged to read some Shakespeare. So I thought I would participate in that. That's one I can do, and it's very convenient because September is also Short Story September. I think that's what it's called, the event, Shorty September, short story. Anyway, you have to read short stories, or you're encouraged to read short stories in September. So I thought I would do that, and I thought I'd combine the two, and I've got the perfect books to do it. So this series I found, there was a very popular bookstore here where I'm at that actually they didn't close down. They moved locations. Although they stopped selling books, they've become more of a stationery shop recently, unfortunately. So they were having a lot of clearance and they had a lot of books they wanted to get rid of. And I found these really cheap. They're called Penguin Popular Classics, but they're in a very weird color. And this neon green sort of color. And it says here on the bottom, says contains 100% recycled paper. I don't know if that's in focus, but maybe if I... Anyway, it says 100%, contains 100% recycled paper, and it's kind of made, it's very floppy, and it's short story. So this one is so this is Shakespeare's Othello, and I've got a series. I've got Othello, I've got The Tempest, I've got As You Like It, again small, and then I also have A Midsummer Night's Dream. So these were being sold for like the equivalent of like 50 cents, US cents. So I grabbed them at the time, and I thought, okay, so there's Shake-Tember and there's Shorty September. So this is Shakespeare and it's short stories. Under 200 pages, I think, is the rule for Shorty September. And I think Shorty September also has prompts. You're supposed to read a short book, and you're supposed to read a short book that will encourage you to do further research. But I'm not following the prompts right now, unfortunately. But I will do the Shakespeare. Just read Shakespeare as short stories. Ideally, there's 4 of them. There's typically 4 weeks in a month, so I'm guessing I'll do one Shakespeare play a week in September. That's the plan, at least. And then that's me covering 2 events in September. So I don't know if that's cheating, but I'm gonna do it like that anyway. Of course, I don't know where to start, but of course there's Othello. Othello I like because it's one of the few Shakespeare stories that involves a sort of Middle Eastern character. Othello is a Moor. I think the story is set in Cyprus, which is, I mean, Cyprus is, it's in the EU. People consider it Europe, but it's very close to the Middle East. It's very much between the Middle East and Europe. We can say between Asia and let's say Hellenic Greece, but So that's where this story is. It takes place. I've seen an Othello play. That was the only Shakespeare play I ever watched was Othello, and it was I was in Washington D.C., the capital of the United States of America. I was doing an internship there, and they had the Kennedy Performance Center. Kennedy, was it the Ken? No, it wasn't the Kennedy. Sorry, I apologize. They have the Shakespeare. This is a long time ago. It was a Shakespeare. There's a famous. I think it's called the Folger Shakespeare Theater. Don't quote me on that, but it's a famous Shakespeare theater in Washington D.C. And they were showing Othello, so I just went. I bought a ticket, and I went. So, but I want to sit down and read it. So that's I don't know if I'll read it first, but I'll read it in September. The other one is The Tempest, as I mentioned. This one is about a tempest, a hurricane that shipwrecks a ship. Just to go back to Othello and also The Tempest, JJ, the blacksmith booktuber, she's read all Shakespeare, which is impressive, an impressive achievement. So she's a big Shakespeare fan. And she had a video. I'll try to link if I remember. I'll try to link it in the description where she was asking if you could wish Shakespeare to write about any subject, whether it's in your part of the world or contemporary times. Like, what would Shakespeare write about World War II, for example? She put out that question. So it was on my mind, the Othello one, because I had said it would be cool if Shakespeare wrote more about the Middle East. I'd be interested in that. This is, I think, the closest thing, because of the main character was a Moor, which is a Muslim. And I think the story, if I remember from the the play that I saw a long time ago now in Washington D.C., a Moor falling in love with a Christian lady. Um, so there's that. I think there's also the Merchant of Venice. I think the Merchant of Venice is a Jewish main character, but a Sephardic Jewish. That's another close one. Venice traded a lot with the Middle East, but I haven't read the Merchant of Venice, so I'm not sure. But the other one, this one, The Tempest, again about hurricane and shipwreck. This is, again, Shakespeare never wrote about America, or, well, I shouldn't say that. With this exception. This exception, they say this play was inspired by a shipwreck that happened in America. It was a ship that was going to relieve Jamestown Colony in Virginia, early in American history, or in European discovery of American history. And there was a ship that got caught in a hurricane, which I think wasn't a very... Hurricanes weren't very well known in Europe. They don't happen in Europe a lot, but it happens a lot in America, in the Western Hemisphere. So I think this is what inspired Shakespeare, and that's what I heard, that The Tempest is inspired by that story. If you watched my reading wrap up for August, I was reading a lot of books about early American discovery of European discovery of early European discovery of America. So basically, the Mayflower, and I read the biography of John Smith, who was popular, him of Pocahontas fame, who was the leading, or one of the leading men at the Jamestown colony. And the Tempest was a ship that was relieving John Smith's Jamestown colony in Virginia. So again, the closest thing I believe that Shakespeare got to mentioning America or the New World, the so-called New World. And then I have two others, I think more of comedy. I think As You Like It as a comedy. I know very little about it. It feels very random, but I have it. And then this one is popular, quite well known. I think there was a movie as well, a popular movie, recently-ish, maybe in the last, I don't know, 20 years. Midsummer Night's Dream. So those are the four I want to read. The Shakespeare TBR for September, and again doing Shake-tember and Shorty September, combining the two. Hopefully that'll work out. The next book or next books I want to read was connected. I said I read in August. I read a book about the Mayflower, and the whole Pilgrim's experience in New England and Plymouth and Massachusetts, New England generally. And then I read the John Smith biography, which is the experience in Jamestown and Virginia, even before Plymouth colony. So that's been on my head because I've been doing Historathon. I'm going to continue Historathon. We're in quarter three of Historathon, and quarter three of Historathon is reading history books based between the year 1500 and the year 1820. So that's why I read the Mayflower book by the author Nathaniel Philbrick, and I read the um, John Smith biography. Again, if you watch that video, you'll get more information about it. In July, I read also books about discovery and exploration. I've already forgotten. I read the biography of Amerigo Vespucci, the man who gave his name to America. And I read also there was a couple of books about exploration. So I'm going to continue in that vein. One of the books I have is by Lawrence Bergreen, and it's called Over the Edge of the World. Not the prettiest cover. And again, I don't know how clear this. The subtitle is Magellan's Terrifying Circumnavigation of the Globe. So this cover is not that great, but then I think there's some nice maps. I think there's Magellan himself. I think Magellan, I don't know much about him. I know that he circumnavigated the world. It's not a spoiler. I hope I'm not spoiling it. I think everybody knows he didn't actually make it. He died halfway. He didn't die, he got killed. I think in some island, some godforsaken island in Philippines. The natives killed him after a skirmish. So he didn't actually complete the trip, but his crew completed it, and so he gets the credit for the first circumnavigation. You can see the arrows of his trip around the world. And then Lawrence Bergen is an author familiar to me. I've read two of his books. He had a book about Marco Polo, which I thought was 50-50. But then he has a book about Columbus, Christopher Columbus, which I thought was really good. So I'm hoping that this is more like the Columbus book and less like the Marco Polo book. But he's also the author of he's an author of the Louis Armstrong biography, who I think Louis Armstrong is the first man to walk on the moon, right? Or is it the jazz musician? But I think and then he's got, okay, because here he's got also, okay. Is it the jazz singer or the moonwalker? I don't know. Because he's got another book called Voyage to Mars, NASA's Search for Life Beyond Earth. Then he's got another book called The Life of Irving Berlin, who I think was a composer. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to read this and we'll see. Or I'll check. Louis Armstrong. There's another Armstrong. There's a musician and there's the moonwalker. I always mix them up. The second one is also about the age of exploration. This is by Andrea Pitzer, and it's called Icebound, Shipwrecked at the Edge of the World. And you can see there's a ship and there's a lot of ice. Again, icebound, pretty obvious. But it says, this is the story, the longest, of William Barents and his crew of 16 men, Europeans of the 16th century, so well into the Historathon parameters. On a quest for trade routes to the east, who ventured farther north than any recorded expedition and found their ship trapped in ice, surrounded on all sides by a vast polar wasteland. The men would fight to survive for an entire year in the Arctic, combating ravenous polar bears and withstanding hunger and relentless winter as they made the 2,000-mile journey home. In Icebound, Andrea Pitzer narrates a cinematic tale of survival and combines it with a sweeping history of the great age of exploration, a time of adventure, peril, and seamlessly limitless scientific and geographic frontiers. The era and the story coincide in William Barnett's a larger-than-life, brilliant explorer who embodies 16th century Europe's greatness and failings, and whose obsessive quest to find the path through the deepest, most remote regions of the Arctic ended in catastrophe and glory. So I don't know how this ends. I think I know about Henry Hudson. I've been reading. Henry Hudson was the one he got mutinied by his crew and they left him and his son. Was it Hudson or Cabot? I think it was Henry Hudson. They left him and his son in the Arctic and mutinied, and they left the ships. His crew left, and they left him and his son to die in the Arctic. But I don't know about William Barents and this story. I'm not very familiar with, but it's very early Arctic exploration, very early North American Arctic exploration, if I'm not mistaken. And there's the author, Andrea Pitzer. It says she's a journalist whose writing has appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Review of Books, Outside, the Daily Beast, Vox, and Slate, among other publications. In researching Icebound, she went on 3 expeditions to the Arctic, retracing William Barron's route and learning sailing tradecraft. Currently, she lives with her family near Washington, D.C. Okay, so well-researched book about a subject, horrifying subject, very uh, difficult part of the world. I actually studied my university in Canada, so I have experience with Arctic conditions. It's not easy, but I mean, it's not easy in the 21st century. Imagine in the 16th what it was like. But yeah, those are the 2 exploration books that I'm covering Historathon. So I've covered Shorty September, I've covered Shake Timber, I'm covering Historathon, Historathon Quarter 3. And the next book was a stupid, silly, idiotic mistake by yours truly. August had an event called Women in Translation, and I made a bunch of videos. But in the videos, some interesting videos got a lot of viewers, a lot of viewing. Mentioned a book close to my heart, related to my family. My grandfather translated a famous memoir. So the book was originally written in German, translated into English. My grandfather translated it into Arabic. But you can watch those videos. But in those videos, I said I can't participate in not in Historathon, in Women in Translation Month, because August was Women in Translation Month. And I said because I had already had books that I wanted to read, and the event came very quickly, so I didn't have time to fit it in. And at the same time, I've been reading this past couple of months. I have a library of books about the Caucasus, that region of Central Asia, or the far extremity of Europe, whatever you want to call it, that includes the Republic of Georgia, the Republic of Azerbaijan, and the Republic of Armenia. 3 countries in a very tight, confined geographical position. So I've been reading books about that. Last month, you can see my reading wrap up. I read Ali and Nino, a famous novel about set in that part of the world. An excellent book. I reviewed it in my last video, or I spoke about it, and I was very impressed. It's a great book, just an excellent book. So anyway, to combine the 2, to get to the point, I had the bunch of my Caucasus books, but I had forgotten that I had a book about the Caucasus, which was written, I think, originally in Azerbaijani, or Azerbaijani Turkish, I guess is the language, by a female author that's been translated to English. And it's this book. It's The Days in the Caucasus. And that's the female author. Her name is Benin. At least that's her nom de, her artistic name. Maybe it's her real name, I'm not sure. And it's by Pushkin Press, this translation, which I think specializes in Soviet, I'm not sure, but there she is. Benin was born al-Bannu Asadullayeva in 1905 into a wealthy family in Baku, then part of the Russian Empire. Following the Russian Revolution and the subsequent fall of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic, Benin was forced to flee her home country, first to Istanbul and then to Paris. In Paris, she formed a wide circle of literary acquaintances, including Nikos Kazantzakis, Andrei Malraux, Ivan Bunin, and Tefi, and eventually began writing herself. Days in the Caucasus is Benin's most famous work. It was published in 1945 to critical acclaim, but has never been translated into English until now. There she is, Benin. And that's the translator. Anne Thompson Ahmadova is a writer and translator from Azerbaijani, French, and Russian. She lived in Baku for 20 years, moving there in 1997, initially to set up the Caucasus Bureau for the BBC monitoring service. So I knew I had a book with a female author that was translated, but I had completely forgotten. I had set it aside, and I should have read this for Women in Translation Month. Instead of reading Ali and Nino, this was perfect for it. So I messed up. I should have read this, and I could have read Ali and Nino this month, but September. But I messed up. I messed up. But regardless, you shouldn't just be reading Women in Translation in August. You should be reading Women in Translation throughout the year. You shouldn't just limit it to 1 month. So, in honor of continuing the Women in Translation uh, flag, I'm going to read this in September. Better late than never. So, that's the next book. Again, I think this is it's a memoir. It wasn't very clear. It's a classic memoir, so it's nonfiction. But again, would have been perfect for Women in Translation, and it would cover my caucus's reading project. But well, there you go. I don't know what to say. Let me just a little bit of make sure the books don't fall over the floor. The next book I want to read, I showed this book in an earlier video and I got a lot of responses. People said, this looks really interesting. This looks really interesting. I was surprised. So I said, I might as well read this and start another book reading project because I have a lot of this author's books. And I'm thinking if I can complete them before the end of the year, I think I have 4 of his books. If I can complete them in September, October, November, December, I can clear his books, or I can say I've read them. This is Michael Burleigh. This is Earthly Powers. And the subtitle is The Clash of Religion and Politics in Europe, from the French Revolution to the Great War. So more like I think the word for this is intellectual history, history of ideas, the clash of religion and politics in Europe pretty much in the 19th century. Very nice cover. But I'm reading this because I purchased this from my used bookstore. It's called The Best of Times, The Worst of Times, by the same author. And the subtitle is A History of Now, and it's got Xi Jinping, and it's got Vladimir Putin, and it's got Donald Trump on the cover. But here I have others of his books that I still haven't read. This one is called Sacred Causes, and it's religion and politics from the European dictators to Al Qaeda. So this is from the 19th century, and this is more the 20th century. So I think this is a continuation or a sequel to this. So I'll read this in September this month, and then maybe this in October. And in November, I'll probably read this, Blood and Rage, A Cultural History of Terrorism. And then in December, maybe this, The Best of Times, The Worst of Times. And then I can say I've read not all, these aren't all his books, but I've read a good chunk of his books. And I can wipe it off the list. Yeah, and then the last book, again, if you had watched my reading wrap up for August, I read the biography because it was Summer of Sports. So you were encouraged to read a book about sports. So I read a book that also hit 2 birds with 1 stone. The sport was this one. Bodybuilding, right there, and that's the biography. It's the autobiography of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Total Recall. This I read in August, and I read it both for Summer of Sports and also because I've got in my library I've got an annoying shelf of these celebrity biographies and just things I picked up on the cheap that I want to read and get rid of. So this was definitely there. So I combined Summer of Sport with reading this. And you can hear my my thoughts on this in the reading wrap-up video. But I had another Arnold Schwarzenegger book. Unfortunately, I found this also cheap, so I picked it up. But it doesn't have a cover. But it's this one isn't an autobiography. This is a biography by an author. It's called Fantastic: The Life of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's the author Lawrence Lemmer. Maybe this is a bit better. And Lawrence Lemmer, it seems he's writes celebrity biographies, so this is just par for the course. He's written books about the Kennedys, and he has books about a lot of books: Sons of Camelot, The Kennedy Men. So I think because Schwarzenegger, there's no point in me holding the book up. Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor of California, and he was married to the Kennedy family. So I think there's a link there, because this book it's autobiographical, and it's Arnold selling himself. Really, he does nothing wrong. Um, this you would think would be a fairer biography by an outsider, but I was reading the intro or the acknowledgments right at the beginning of the book, and it says the first thing is I would like to first thank Arnold. I would like to thank Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I finished my research, Schwarzenegger allowed me several interviews. We'll see. Again, the title, fantastic. I'm assuming, I don't know why I'm holding the book up. I'm assuming is friendly. It's going to be a friendly biography by a fawning or a supportive author, just like the autobiography, which was ghostwritten, not ghostwritten, but co-written or ghostwritten. Yeah, with Peter Petre was also, of course, in his own autobiography. He's gonna make himself look like an angel. We'll see if this is any fairer, but again, these celebrity books, I'm trying to get rid of them in 2025 so that I can no more celebrity books or well, I should never say never, but we'll see. Let's just keep it like that. But anyway, book two, that was it for September. I look forward to reading these books. I'll let you know how they went, hopefully by the end of the month. Until then, and I'll make videos between now and the end of the month for sure. Other videos, I hope. So until then, see you. Salute.